There's just so much happening in the firearms sphere. Let's take a look at the latest from the world of guns. Bill to repeal new state gun laws. Senator Joe Griffo is legislatively on the record asking for a repeal of the state's new gun laws. Griffo, Republican Rome, recently introduced S.9501 to repeal the changes approved by the state legislature during its extraordinary session in late June in response to the U.S. Supreme Court's decision in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association, Inc. versus Bruin, which struck down New York's law requiring that an applicant for a concealed carry firearm license demonstrate proper cause. S.9501 is unlikely to be placed on a committee agenda when the state legislature reconvenes in January. We all want to end gun violence, and we agree that there is a real need to get illegal guns off the street, Griffo said during a recent news conference. However, the legislation passed by the legislative majorities in a non-transparent fashion and signed into law by the governor, which we and the public were given little time to scrutinize, is confusing and crafted without input from important stakeholders such as law enforcement. This legislation will further burden local governments, hurt small business owners, and adversely affect the men and women throughout New York, especially those in upstate communities who safely and responsibly utilize firearms. The state's new gun laws require those applying for a license to carry a handgun to provide 4 character references, take 16 hours of firearm safety training, and an additional 2 hours of practice at a range, undergo periodic background checks, and turn over contact information for their spouse, domestic partner, or any other adults living in their household. They will also have to turn over a list of social media accounts they have maintained in the past, although it's not clear if they will have to provide licensing officers with access to social media accounts not visible to the public. People also won't be allowed to carry firearms at a long list of sensitive places, including New York City's tourist-packed Times Square. That list also includes schools, universities, government buildings, places where people have gathered for public protests, healthcare facilities, places of worship, libraries, public playgrounds and parks, daycare centers, summer camps, addiction and mental health centers, shelters, public transit, bars, theaters, stadiums, museums, polling places, and casinos. We have a lot of questions, and there's a lot of very specific questions regarding how it might apply to individual permits, and we try our best to answer a lot of those questions, Romeo said. Unfortunately, as with I think the rest of the state, a lot of these things we don't have the answers for. Walther shows off new PDP F-Series and WMP pistols. Walther was on hand at the NRA's annual meeting in Houston over Memorial Day weekend to give visitors a first-hand look at 2 of its newest offerings, the 9mm PDP F-Series and the just-released WMP chambered in .22 Magnum. Both guns are optics ready, but that's largely where the similarities stop. The newer WMP line can host an assortment of plates for your favorite dot and boasts a 15-round mag. Notably, the pistols are a hammer-fired design for the Magnum rim-fired cartridge, with the hammer itself internally visible at the port in the rear of the slide. Despite using the smaller round, the guns are noticeably full-sized in the hand and were designed to be both plinkers and controllable self-defense firearms. The handguns also host Walther's quad mag release, featuring mag release buttons and paddles on both sides of the trigger guard. Available in both 3.5 and 4-inch barrel versions, the striker-fired PDP F-Series extends Walther's flagship PDP line, with an eye toward customizing the grip, trigger pull, and slide rack weight for smaller hands. The mag release was moved further back for less thumb reach. Similarly, the trigger geometry was moved back to reduce the overall length of pull. The grip texture remains the popular and grippy performance duty texture, and the gun still accepts standard PDP mags with a button release design. A new Walther patented operating system reduces the amount of force required to rack the slide by 20%. Also making an appearance was the PDP Pro SD model with a flared magwell, dynamic performance trigger, Gen 2 optics cut, and threaded barrel. Options will include a model with a 4.5-inch barrel and a compact version hosting a 4-inch barrel. Those are still waiting to ship for anyone who wants even more performance out of the already feature-heavy PDP lineup. LCP Max, Ruger's mighty micro pistol or weak mouse. Ruger has built a reputation over the last decade for offering budget-friendly micro semi-autos, with the latest generation arriving last summer in the shape of the double-stack LCP Max. It's basically a capacity upgrade of the previous single-stack LCP2, tacking on 4 more rounds for a total of 10+1 in the palm of your hand. Touted as lightweight, compact, and powerful, LCP. See what they did there? We finally got the itch to try out these itsy-bitsy carry guns as summer rolled around. So we took it for a spin. Sometimes you can tell if a gun is a gimmick or marketing trick just by looking at it. That didn't strike us as true for the little LCP Max, but we did instantly know that they weren't lying about its size when we opened the box. Mind you, there are much tinier guns and have been for generations, a la Le Petit Protecteur ring guns that go back to the 19th century. But the LCP Max truly is small in the sense of a modern semi-auto pistol chambered for a capable self-defense round. We didn't really find the gun aesthetically attractive, but it had the simple lines of a deep concealment piece. We also instantly felt like it was going to be awkward to shoot, but we were happy to see decent sights with a bright tritium front dot. It felt promising, but not overly so. When we picked it up, it pointed well enough for us, and the big front sight seemed like a great addition for such a small sight radius. The slightly thicker grip, needed for the double-stack mag with medium-level grip texture, also filled our hands better than the thinner single-stacked LCP2, which we were also testing. Still, our bottom pinky clearly dangled freely, and we wondered how it would do while shooting. Before we dive into the performance, it's probably worth noting what makes this small gun actually function. In many ways, it just looks like a shrunk-down standard striker-fired pistol, but the insides tell otherwise. For one thing, the gun is actually hammer-fired. Takedown is also unlike many modern semi-autos. It requires the removal of a small pin, which is not easily achieved without the aid of a tool to pry or push it free. We found that shell casings actually worked fine. Either way, it was never designed to be a field gun in need of field maintenance. When you get inside the guts, other than the fact it is hammer-fired and has a removable retaining pin, the gun is pretty much your standard affair. Barrel, slide, recoil spring and rod, and frame. New ATF Director. No one solution to ending gun issues. Stephen Dettelbach, the newly sworn-in director of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, said there is no overarching answer to solving the nation's gun issues, even as guns have become the leading cause of fatalities for children in the U.S. One of the things that makes this problem so hard is that it looks way different depending on where you are, Dettelbach said in an interview. Dettelbach acknowledged that the problem is urgent, but said it's hard to compare the issue as seen in large cities like New York City and Chicago with places like South, Alaska, and small towns. The reason that we're having a hard time coming up with one solution is because there is no one solution. The solutions are different based upon where things are, he said. Following his confirmation recently, Dettelbach was ceremonially sworn in as ATF Director, making him just the second Senate-confirmed director in the agency's history and the first permanent director the agency has had in more than 7 years. He is helming the ATF amid a wave of mass incidents across the U.S., which has fueled a renewed push for gun control measures. Last month, President Biden signed into law the most significant gun control bill in decades, though it still fell short of what gun control advocates wanted. Although he has called for an assault weapons ban in the past, when asked what laws he would like to see changed to help the ATF stop gun violence, Dettelbach punted to Congress. As the ATF director, my focus and is going to have to be on taking whatever laws Congress provides, what is already there, taking the technology that's there, taking the resources that are there, and catching the bad guys, he said. The ATF director's job and ATF, our mission is to catch people who have violated the laws we already have. But when pressed on what the ATF can do about mass incidents, he did concede part of the focus needs to be on prevention, including giving people in the prison system options other than going back to doing the same thing that got them there. I'm coming into this position with a sober view of the challenge ahead, he said. That's all for this video, folks. See you another time.